I'm Dr. Kevin Lenton. I'm a chiropractor, functional medicine and functional nutrition specialist practicing in Cape Town, South Africa. For the last 25 years, I've incorporated the principles and concepts of functional medicine into my chiropractic practice very successfully. And I'd like to spend just the next few minutes chatting to you about the nutritional management of learning, behavioral, attention and hyperactivity disorders. These particular conditions are actually on the increase dramatically. One only has to look at some of the scientific evidence which clearly points out that things like kids on the autistic spectrum have increased from something like 4 to 5 in 10,000 in the early 1980s right up to something like 1 in 50 in 2012. So there's a dramatic increase in this kind of condition. This is a spectrum of disorders that involves a whole range of different things. There are certainly some what's called antecedent factors. Those are your genetics, whether there's a particular mismatch in some of the chromosomal material that sends polymorphisms and affects one's general immunity. It might be certain epigenetic factors that occurred in utero, certain infections, certain toxicities, and then of course there are many triggering events like oxidative burden, for example, inflammation, perhaps even vaccines. There's a lot been written about that, medications, certain predisposition to xenobiotic exposure, which is perhaps high levels of estrogen in pollutants, nutritional deficiencies, immune and gastrointestinal problems. And this certainly contributes to many of the particular symptoms that we see in young children with learning, behavioral, and certainly even autistic type behavior patterns. There's a large subset of children diagnosed with autistic predisposition that have pathway problems in the liver metabolism and the ability of the liver to detoxify. This is very easily managed using nutritional principles and concepts. Another factor that has been clearly found is that children on this type of spectrum have a very low homocysteine level. This is so easily managed with appropriate nutritional supplementation. So we all know that the body is generally one great big chemistry set. Everything happens in a very orchestrated and predetermined way. Something has to go from, say, point A to point B, from point B to C, and from C to D, with a result at the end of that. Going from point A to point B often requires many cofactors like vitamins, amino acids, essential fatty acids to catalyze the process going from step A to step B. If there's a block or an interference in that process, the body then reacts and the end result is a whole range of different symptoms. It's been clearly shown through the different types of testing that is now available that many of these children show an incredible predisposition to oxidative damage. That means that there are a range of free radical cells that are being produced in the body in response to some sort of triggering event. Again, it could be nutritional, it could be a food intolerance of some kind, it could be an infection, it could be an inflammatory process. And this oxidative stress results in an overflow so that the liver cannot process these free radical cells and other cells effectively. There's very often a deficiency in many of the minerals like chromium and copper and manganese and magnesium and potassium, even zinc and vanadium. These are substances that are crucial to proper function of these biochemical processes in the body. We also see that there's a huge deficiency in vitamin B almost across the board with these young kids, and that often comes from nutritional deficiencies. So we also see that there are many detoxification markers where there's a deficiency in certain of the amino acids which help in the process through the liver, the phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification phases through the liver, and that will result in a toxicity in the body. There's also an association regarding a family history of type 1 diabetes and rheumatoid arthritis, for example. So if parents have this predisposition, they may well be more predisposed to having children that have any of the learning, behavioral, ADD, ADHD, or even autistic spectrum disorders. There are many instances where the simple management using very simple and easy techniques to assist with the detoxification process work extremely well. The way I normally start is with a very simple elimination diet. And this doesn't have to be any rocket science. It's a simple case of removing things like dairy products, peanuts, perhaps gluten, sugar, trans fatty acids, all the hyper refined foods and junk foods, and a reduced saturated fat intake. Very often these patients require organic foods as much as possible because they are very sensitive to toxicants in the foods. Supplementation is an absolute key. Zinc, a good phytomulti product that includes the phytonutrients from the plants and that has a whole range of vitamins and minerals. Vitamin D is often something that these children are deficient in and that requires supplementation. And omega-3 are crucial to proper anti-inflammatory management. Perhaps even less omega-6 and way more omega-3 will be necessary for these children. So as a basic rule, just to start off a very simple management program rather than subject children to the mood stabilizing drugs like Ritalin and Concerta, for example, it's such a win to start with the process of an elimination diet, looking at specific supplementation so that you can empower the body with all the raw materials and cofactors that it requires. Nutritional management is so important and can make such a difference. So if you'd like more information, please feel free to email me. My email address is klentin, Lentin, @iafrica.com. You'll see that appear on the screen now. And I'll be very glad to help you with any additional information. Thanks for taking the time to listen.